Welcome back to another case study episode where we review one of our athletes' performances or improvements and break down exactly what we did with them to get that result. Before we get into the episode, we want to remind you of our athletes' unwritten rule. For us, as you know, we do this podcast for free. We give you all our best information and tips to help you train smarter and race faster. And the only thing we ask you to do in return is if you listen to an episode that you enjoy or find really helpful, you can really help us by making sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it and share it on your socials. Go to your Instagram or your Facebook and share a photo of the episode. It's something we'd really appreciate, athlete to athlete. So today's case study, Harrison, 24-year-old from a smaller town out in the country here in Victoria, Australia. A very great story here. He runs a family business, works long hours, and this is just a great case study of someone being able to improve in all three disciplines with a super consistent training program for the year. And it's a pretty straightforward case study. So, Dad, take us through a bit of background around Harrison.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll want to make sure that everybody understands that not every case study we do has some absolute standout gems of information. But this does have really good information, but it's not extreme. And what are we trying to get across here? Well, Harrison, he's in a family business and he can see that that's going to be part of his life for the next 30, 40 years if he continues down this journey. He's told me that he wants to, start to run his family business, and so he's got very limited time. That they work long hours, and as a 24-year-old, that's a lot to manage when you're young and you've got aspirations to have a reasonable, good social life. I suppose at that age, I can't remember, it's that long ago, George, and it shows the seriousness side of Harrison, and wanting to get the most out of himself. And when he contacted us, it was a referral from one of the mates I used to train with back in the 80s, who was a really good triathlete, and he actually taught Harrison as his PE teacher. So it was a great story of someone really understanding what it takes to get improvement. And the number one thing is he's done so well is his consistency. And there's a lot of challenges he's had. He works, incredible hours, and he's only got limited time to train. Anything between 6 and 8 to 10 hours a week. And so you want to get the best bang for your buck, and you wouldn't expect there to be drastic improvements with that amount of time available to train. But what he has done well is, prioritize the sessions, and that meant, getting up early or training late after work, and they're the things he does. He does all the hard yards, and doesn't shirk any of those. And you would feel pretty tired after a big day at work, and maybe you've been working 10, 12-hour day, and then to have to go and train after that, or get up crack of dawn and train before work. It takes a lot of self-discipline, I suppose, and really want to hone in on that. It's something that everybody has going to be challenged by, and the people who can get on top of that and be consistent with their training, regardless of the hurdles that are thrown at you, regardless of the roadblocks, and we say it consistently, there are going to be many, and injury, sickness, meetings at work, and if you can still maintain consistency, this guy epitomizes getting improvement from sticking to the task and getting the basics right. Just really honing in on that. And look, one of the things he asked us right at the beginning was, I just want to learn as much as I can so I can be a smarter athlete, and understand why these sessions are going to help me improve. And I think I've said that a lot over the journey, that if you're more informed, you will be more likely to do the sessions better. So if you understand why this session is going to help you, why we're doing a recovery session, because we want to let our body heal. And so recruitment of muscles happens after a hard session, so you want to recover. And if you understand that theory of recovery, then you will implement recovery. If you understand that you need to have overload to stress the muscles, then you'll be on board with a hard session. So they're examples of him just wanting to learn about why the sessions are where they are and when they are. And now I think that's the key thing, that he's really stuck to that basic task of, here's my session, how can I fit it into my weekly program, And we've watched the results come, and for us, it's just as sensational as someone who's done something absolutely amazing from the previous case studies that we've had. But truly, this is sort of amazing in its really simple form.
And look, I will say that I want to reiterate that first point you made, that not every case study has to be this sensationalist, the most exaggerated results, which we get a lot of, and it's really fun to talk about those and really see some extreme changes from complete beginner to really good results. But at the same time, there's no bouncing around the fact that he's had a 100-watt FTP improvement, a 3-minute improvement over 10K, and a 5-minute improvement over the swim, which we'll get to those improvements in a second, how they've come about. But they're incredible results. But I think the key point we want to make here is that this is a pretty straightforward program and a pretty straightforward case study of, a guy who came in and just wanted to, like you said, learn as much as he could, stick to some structure. And it's just a very typical type kind of age group athlete, someone that works long hours, time is limited, and what they can do with a consistent program over the course of a year when they actually stick to it. And like we said, we do have some remarkable stories of athletes we coach. And today, this is really, we just want to highlight how this program works and the awesome improvement you can get from sticking to something really consistently and trusting the process. And I was listening to a Joe Friel podcast. We love Joe Friel. He was talking to some of his coaches, and they were talking about a range of periodization methods that you can use with age group athletes, and studies showing some wildly different types of programs that could work. Really mixing things up with having a super high intensity and volume week, and then having 3 weeks of low volume, low intensity after that. That kind of structured training, and all these different examples of what could work. And it was really interesting to listen to. And at the end of the episode, they said to Joe, the godfather of triathlon training, what's your conclusion here with all these methods? What would you like to say? And he just said, if you're an age grouper, I'd probably recommend not doing any of those methods and just keeping it simple and sticking to structure, finding what works within your time limits and ranges, and do it consistently and just stick to the basic principles. And I think this is a great example, this case study of that, and you don't always have to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, it's a good story, actually. And look, one of the things that Harrison's done well is, he didn't have any idea of what to do and when to do it in his previous training. And that's the thing he's been, he tells us he's very grateful for, because now he knows that he's got the right training session in the right balance of rest recovery. That's enabled him to see completely different results from where he was just kind of training too hard all the time and not really having any sort of structure that made sense. And now he really has learnt a lot about, managing himself on a day-to-day basis at work, and fatigue levels and food and nutrition and recovery, and then being able to train really well when it counts, and watched himself improve seemingly with less effort almost. Sure, we still train with intensity and we have to focus, and there's some hard days there, but previously it was all hard, and yet he wasn't getting the improvement that he was looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's the big key, is that when his goals, when he first signed up with us, we make all our athletes kind of write in their short-term and long-term goals. And one of his short-term goals was, I just don't want to waste any sessions. I just want to be able to turn up each day and just know that I've got a session designed for me that's actually going to keep the needle moving forward, just going to help me keep improving. And he kind of felt like he was wasting a lot of sessions because he was just turning up and doing whatever on the day. And I guess those were his big challenges that we had to overcome. And the goals of the program were to stick to what he could fit in his week. And he started with a lot lower volume. If you look back at the start of his program, he's probably doing 7 to 8 hour kind of training weeks, just as he got used to the training. And then now he's able to average somewhere between 9, 10, 11 hours of training a week, depending on the week. Sometimes it does go a bit higher if he's got a little bit more time, and sometimes a little bit lower with deload weeks, etc. And has to be said that he does work Saturdays sometimes, so that makes the endurance stuff hard on there. So these are all challenges that you have to overcome. And that combined with, he didn't have as much structure and he needed guidance around what to do each day. And as we start implementing that and start implementing the core principles of our program, getting the right type of high intensity sessions, getting the VO2 max sessions in where they're needed. And this year he was aiming, at the end of last year, he was aiming for Melbourne 70.3. So as you get closer to that, it's more race-pace kind of sessions that you can introduce. And he was able to cope with that because he started December 2022. By the time it came to July-ish, August, September 2023, he was able to really do some good race-pace bike sessions with some 5 kilometer or progressively faster runs off the bike at race pace. So Yeah, that was some of the challenges he had to overcome, and that consistency. By the end of last year, his results were just a world away from where he started.
Yeah, and I think we should go into some of those results. But the actual understanding of how to implement those race ready training sessions, race specific training sessions we've talked about in a lot of our podcasting, and he got firsthand experience at that. And it's all very well hearing someone talk about that, but actually going out and putting that into your session, and you get a clear understanding of, oh crap, I can't actually hold what I think I can hold as power or pace on the bike or running, or geez, I'm able to do that after 3 or 4 weeks of doing these sessions. I actually can now get closer to what my aspirations were for what I think I could do, and like the example I would use is, when he first started, he did a sprint race, which was 20K ride and a 5K run, and that was, I think, March 2023. And by the time he got to November 2023, which is literally, was that half a year later,
Yeah,
he
8 months later.
he was riding, a lot faster speed than he was in a sprint race. Like, I think his average speed was 34.9, 34 point something. And come the 90K, he was able to average 35.4. That's just mind blowing that you could actually be faster over 90K than you are over 20, just with 6 months worth of training.
That's probably the key point. Is so if we look at his first FTP test, his starting FTP was 171 watts, and then his FTP in December last year was 276. That's 105 watt FTP improvement. So that's pretty monstrous. But we do want to make a really big asterisk here that his first FTP test, you'd probably put down to a little bit of lack of experience and execution, because only 4 to 6 weeks later, he did another one and he was able to hold 220 watts. So he's already, that's a 50 watt improvement from test to test. But that highlights a really good point, is that one, we're not trying to just say some sensationalist FTP improvement, even though that has been his improvement. But by his second test, just by learning execution and how to execute a test and how to execute over 20 minutes, he found massive gains just from a bit of practice. And so you can just think that even if you don't do any training, if you just were able to do 2 FTP tests and practice that execution before a race, think about the gains you could find there. So realistically, from Jan, Feb to November, the watt increase has been another 56 watts or 57 watts, which is still massive. But we do really want to make that point. And then what does that actually mean on race day? Well, as you said, in March, he rode 34.9 kilometers for a 20 kilometer race. And then November, like you said, he's faster, not crazy faster, 35.4. But it's over 90 kilometers, almost 5 times the distance, and he's riding faster. So that just shows what that actual improvement means.
Yeah, and if we dig a bit deeper, which is what we always do, you'll find that his power was actually lower in the 90K time trial than it was in the 20K time trial. And that shows, again, execution on the course, when to ride harder, when to ride softer to get a faster speed. And other things that would help that would be getting a bike fit and getting more aero. These are all key things that contribute to, we want to ride our bikes faster. That's the goal. How fast can you ride from A to B? And what things can you do to enable you to be a 33K an hour rider to a 34, to a 35 or 36K an hour rider? That's what we're after. And anything you can do, and all the things we talk about in the podcast, are all contributing to this. Of course, the training has been the key number one thing, but execution, as you just said, contributes a lot. And then the setup you have, so all these things combined are enabling each one of our athletes, and Harrison's a standout at this, where he can actually ride faster speed for less power.
Yeah, it's another reminder that although we base all our training around power and our execution around power, the faster speed is the goal. So power is just a means to get that faster speed. So going through his other results, his first 5 kilometer run time trial was 4:15 pace, and then his latest 10 kilometer time trial was 3:51 pace. So he's 25 seconds faster per kilometer for double the distance. So that is just a massive improvement. So what does that mean? Well, over 10K, that's a 3-minute improvement, and over a 70.3, that would add up to a 6-minute improvement. And we can't actually compare that because you didn't do a 70.3 half marathon at the start. But if you just add it, if you ran 4:15 pace for a half marathon compared to 3:51, Yeah, that's a monster improvement. That's big gains in a race time. And then same thing with the swim. His first time trial was 206 pace, and he's now down to 149. And so again, if you equate that per 100 over a half Ironman, over a 1900 meter swim, that ends up being a 5-minute improvement. So yeah, just awesome results to see. And I guess we just want to kind of conclude about how straightforward it seems, but some pretty awesome results.
Yeah, and everybody who listens to our case studies is obviously wanting to know the improvement. That's important. But the question is, how? How does that happen? And we're trying to give that information as we're talking through the case studies. And I just gave an example there of on the bike, doing certain things really well in training. But one of the key things is that, you've got to have the mindset that it's not going to happen in a minute or a week or a month or 6 months. If you've got the idea and the attitude that this could take 2 years or 3 years, and Harrison's only 24. He's got literally another 30 years if you wanted to in the sport, and learning as much as you can early on, and then trying to practice that is going to take time to get to where you want to go. And there's no ceiling for anybody that's out there or that we coach, but we still want to be pushing that ceiling higher and higher. And I continually have race analysis discussions with people and say to them at the end of the day, dig into your race tactics on the day and find areas where you're maybe not performing as well. And I just got on the phone this afternoon to someone, and we're talking about their 40K Olympic distance time trial on the bike, and I was pointing out that he spent 20% of his time at least 60 watts higher than he averaged for the ride. And then he averaged 25% of the time, 50% lower than he averaged for the average power for the ride. Well, that's over 50% too low or too high. And so therefore, those pieces of information, they're the things that are going to get you to improve as an athlete without changing your fitness level, just by, not spiking and not riding softly, just riding in the right zones. And so, being in it for the long term, you'll learn all these things, and it takes practice. That's what I'm trying to say here. You just can't do that in a race unless you've actually practiced it and shown yourself that, okay, I've got no time in zone 1 and 2, and I'm doing an Olympic race, and no time in zone 5 and 6. All my time is in zone 3 and 4. And so once you can master that, then you will start to see improvements. And this is some of the stuff that Harrison's already started to pick up on and doing well.
Yeah, I think we've used the term like straightforward or simple a couple of times in this episode. And what does that actually mean? Well, I just think it means that over the course of over a year now, he really just stuck to the basics and he did them really well for a year straight. And that's actually quite hard to do. It's simple, it's simple method, but it's hard to execute. And that's kind of the secret sauce. It's where if you can do it for a year straight, relatively consistently, everyone's going to have some interruptions. That's basically what he did. He's done really consistent endurance rides and runs. He's done really consistent high intensity sessions midweek. He's done really consistent runs off the bike. He's done really consistent swim sessions. So mixing up between high intensity swim sessions and endurance based swim sessions. So yeah, I think my conclusion for Harrison is that I got to meet him in person recently, which is always awesome. And he was just chatting about the lessons he's learned from Trivelo. And one thing he kind of said a couple of times was he just loves trusting the process and just trusting what we have to say and not trying to overcomplicate it, not trying to do too much. He said that he's really motivated in periods to try and train more and try and overdo it, and he knows that that's just almost counterproductive right now for where he's at, especially early in his journey. And like you said, he knows he's in it for the long haul, and he can get to a point where he can start really increasing the volume. That's another option, but not to overcomplicate it right now. Just stick to the program, stick to what's working, and the results are outstanding because of it.
Yeah, but I suppose my final word would be that he is having the right mindset of, I'm in this for a long time. I want to learn as much as I can, and the improvement takes time, and that's what he's sort of opened himself up for, knowing that if he keeps the dedication that he's got and the mindset that this is a journey I'm on, I will continue to improve as an athlete. And that's the thing I love about his attitude is really going to hold him in good stead to get the improvement that he's looking for.
That's it for another case study episode. Thanks very much for listening. Join us next week for our normal Get Fast podcast episode and another case study. Cheers.